And welcome to part 3 with the wonderful Sally. She's from Mental Health First Aid England. She is qualified, she's an instructor, mental health coach. And today in part 3, we are talking about identifying loneliness. And the first half of this video, we're speaking to people within those senior roles, managers, team leaders, and how to identify if someone in your team is feeling lonely. So, Sally, if I am a manager and I have noticed a difference in one of my colleagues, what might I have noticed?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Sam. And I love the question because it's about what is the difference. Okay, so with loneliness, it can be invisible. We might not see anything at all. If somebody's living with it and they're holding their feelings and their thoughts inside, we might not, see it. People can hide things very well. When it comes to being a manager, a team leader, we do need to have a baseline of what somebody's normal is, because all the time we're looking out for changes in people from that normal. There's no such thing as normal. We all have our own version of it. So we do need to be aware and have those relationships built, and the trusting relationships built, so we can identify any kind of signs or any kind of changes. We might notice that somebody spends a lot of time alone. You might have a manager or team leader saying, loneliness is an issue here. We work in teams, the relationships are great. But again, it's a very personal experience. Yeah. So it might be that you do spot that somebody spends a lot of time on their own. But we know that alone time doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is feeling lonely. But you might be picking up on somebody's finding it difficult to connect with others in the team, not really having those conversations with people. They might be feeling that they're finding it difficult to fit. No one really gets me. And even if they are surrounded by people. So as a team leader, as a manager, looking from the outside in, it's kind of looking at those interactions, looking at the engagement levels. What are those conversations looking like? How are those relationships building with one another? I think productivity levels is also something to look out for. So, a sudden drop in productivity could be a warning sign of something really deep. So as a team leader, as a manager, I think we do need to be mindful about how we have conversations about, well, I've noticed your output isn't what it was, it's changed, it's not good enough. If we're taking a really strict hardline approach, that might not be helpful for somebody experiencing that loneliness and the impacts potentially on their mental health and their physical health. So the productivity changes, being able to work in a team, the relationship building side of things, again, that takes confidence. If somebody's feeling lonely, they might be feeling particularly anxious about that and finding that difficult. And I would say, how people are engaging on a day-to-day basis. So is somebody, expressing self-doubt, a lack of self-worth? Are they focusing on the negatives? Nothing's really positive. They might be dwelling on the bad experiences. They might be getting annoyed by small things that they wouldn't ordinarily feel annoyed by either. So again, it's all about that normal and that change. And sickness absence, absolutely a sign. And all of these signs could be signs of many things as well. So we don't really know, is this loneliness? Is this a mental health issue? Is there something else going on that somebody's, going through at the moment? So it's all about how do we then engage in the conversation with that person to really truly understand, because we're not really going to know what's stemming these changes in this person, the behaviours, the thoughts, the feelings. Even things like physical appearance. If somebody's experiencing the sleep disturbances, they're not able to sleep, they're feeling stressed more, you're likely to notice, well, they look physically fatigued, they're looking more tired than usual, maybe a little bit more dishevelled than usual. So it's all about then how we have the conversation, having spotted some of those signs in people.
And that leads on really nicely. So we've got a really strong list there. And the main thing that jumps out to me is knowing your team. Know the people within your team for you to be able to, identify if something's wrong with them. So make the time to get to know them, because you could be able to help so much more. So I know my team. I've noticed that someone is not their usual selves. How do I go about that conversation?
Okay, so first and foremost, we probably want to think about that setting of that conversation. So where am I going to have this chat? If we're working remotely as well, so we might have spotted changes working remotely. Somebody's looking more tired. They're saying that they're fine, but their smile is very thin and they're kind of looking down and their body language is different. We need to think about that setting. Where is somebody going to feel safe to open up? Yeah. There's lots of stigma associated with loneliness, so people can find it particularly hard to talk about. So finding a quiet, safe space. We don't want people interrupting. We don't want people barging. We don't want to be distracted by the environment either. So that quite safe setting for you as a team leader, as a manager, as an individual, but also where am I going to get the most out of this person as well. And getting that environment can be half the battle. You know, if somebody feels like, oh, well, they're going to overhear us, so I can't open up, well, they're not going to open up. So, you know, if we're working with people, it could be doing something like a walk and talk. Let's catch up over a coffee. We'll find a quiet corner. Do you want to grab a bite to eat? As we work remotely, you know, it might be something like a Zoom, but we do know that research has told us over the last couple of years, a walk and talk over the phone can be really helpful. People are much more willing to open up and talk about things over the phone than in a setting like this, where, you know, you're kind of staring at each other. You don't really have many options for body language and eye contact. So, you know, that could be a really good top tip there. So thinking about
I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that. I didn't. So for everyone that's watching, that's working from home, and, you know, you're concerned about a team member, you know, just putting in some time for a walk and talk. I really like that. I've not heard that before. You know, can make the world of difference. And if it's proven, then you're going on strong evidence that, you know, you're going to get a good outcome from that conversation.
Yeah, there's a lot of research about it. And there are some therapeutic approaches now that are doing walks and talks in nature rather than sitting in a room across the room in two massive chairs. Actually, some therapists are now doing kind of walks and talks in nature as part of their therapeutic process as well. So that's how effective it can be. And this is all about eye contact. We don't want uncomfortable eye contact. We don't want people feeling, I feel like I'm being stared out, I feel like I'm being stared down. As walks and talks, you can kind of look across quite naturally, comfortable eye contact. People tend to, when you're kind of walking and talking, kind of moseying along, everything feels a lot more natural when it comes to opening up and things like that.
I really like that. So, you know, normally, and especially, you know, my sort of idea before we had this chat would be, you know, to invite that person into an office. It's safe and it's quiet. But actually, the better way to do it is make some time, go out for a walk, grab a coffee, and just take a walk around your local town. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no worries at all. Neutral setting, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And depending on the relationship, it could be an in the car conversation. So you're still side by side, but you're in the car. Very little eye contact, feels very natural, feels very neutral.
Yeah. And I suppose you're away from that office environment as well, aren't you, at the same time? Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Someone might find it difficult to talk about loneliness. So it's about, you know, asking open, non-judgmental questions, I would say, and really encouraging the person to talk. And I think sometimes people can feel worried entering any kind of conversation like this, because it's kind of like, well, what if I don't have the answer? And what if I say the wrong thing? I don't really know what to say. What if I can't fix it? And that's something that you don't need to worry about, because a lot of the time what people need to do is share. They need to share their thoughts and they need to share their feelings. And the saying goes, a problem shared is a problem halved. So you can give people that space, ask open questions, engage in a really meaningful way, show our care, and take the time to really encourage that person to talk and really listen to them. We can do all sorts of things like allow for silence. Silence is great because someone's going to fill it. How do we encourage people to talk? By allowing the silence.
Yeah.
Can be really powerful. Yeah, definitely.
No, I love that.
Yeah, and really listen. That's going to be the most important thing. Across all my training programs, I talk about listening. We've got to listen to understand people. We don't need to listen to fix people's problems or provide solutions. That's not our role.
Yeah, no, I remember that from our training session. You know, it's very keen that you're listening in the right way. Are you listening to understand, which is everything that we should be doing, rather than listening to just respond? Because if you haven't fully understood, how can you respond correctly? So yeah, mate, I remember that, and that's great. So, you know, managers listening, you know, take a lot from this. Firstly, get to know your team. I'm sure you all do, but get to really know them, because then you'll be able to know when they're not their usual selves. You know, there's lots of ways to go about this conversation, but, you know, listening to Sally, it's walk and talk, get them out of the office environment, you know, make them feel relaxed, go for a coffee. And if you are working from home and you don't have that sort of face-to-face contact, I imagine, you know, sticking your earphones in and having that conversation while you're both on a walk can, you know, be just as beneficial to you both.
Yeah. And I think being really purposeful with the connection as we work remotely, in some industries, not estate agency necessarily, because you are dealing with kind of vendors and teams and all sorts of people on a day-to-day basis, but it has been quite easy for some people to log on in the morning, work through the day, then log off and not have spoken to anyone. And so how can we be more purposeful for ourselves on how do we connect with people? So first thing in the morning, how do those connections happen? Well, maybe we have a team meeting every morning at 9 to half 9 to talk about nothing. But then how do we close the end of the day? Do we just log off, or can we pick up the phone just for 5 minutes and say, just to let you know, I'm going to be logging off in 5 minutes. How's your day been? What you've been up to? How can we purposefully connect? How can we take action for ourselves so we feel connected? So we might challenge ourselves every day. I'm going to speak to 3 people every day, and those might be 3 different people. It might be a couple of people who are the same, who are really important to us. Again, building those trusting relationships. But how can we be more purposeful with the actions that we take so we can feel connected if we're feeling disconnected?
That's so good, and that goes back to our, our part 1, doesn't it, of having that checklist of what you're doing to look after yourself. And especially if you are running a team and you do have your, as part of your team working from home, is it getting to 5:30, 6 o'clock and they're just switching off? Or actually, can you put a call in so they can close the day properly, leave everything that they've gone through at their desk at home, and then, they can come out of it properly without bringing anything into their evening. It's another really great top tip. Thank you, Sally.
No worries. I'm just thinking with team leaders, our managers, sorry, I'm just thinking,
no, go ahead.
This and think, well, I manage a team of 10, I manage a team of 15, how am I supposed to do that? It doesn't have to all fall to team leaders and managers. It could be having that conversation. How are we going to engage with one another? How are we going to feel connected? It might be about creating buddy systems, 2 or 3 people in a group who regularly check in with one another at different points during the day. So you might have managers, team leaders thinking, well, that's all very nice, but actually, I've got loads and loads of people that I manage. Well, then how can we create those networks, and how can we share ideas and get people's thoughts from our teams into how we're going to do that?
That's a great idea. No, I like that. So, if you do have a big team, set up a buddy system. And I know an estate agency that does this really well, where they check in the morning, they see what's going on throughout each other's day. And then when it comes to closing time, sort of 20 minutes before, they have a chat, what's been their day like, and then they can close. So that's a really good idea. So the responsibility doesn't always lie upon the manager. You can get the whole team engaging in this to help everyone. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Sally. Some great bits of advice in there for everyone, and I will see you in part 4.
Fab, thanks very much.